Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing The Bear Season 1, and today we are on episode 3, titled Brigade. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. All right, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for episode 3.
Carmi attends Al-Anon. Sydney struggles to gain the respect of the staff.
Short, sweet, and to the point. Yes. Yes, indeed. All right. What is your episode title of choice for episode 3?
Mine is Chill Arky.
Amazing. Yes. Nothing about this place is chill or this hierarchy. No one is chill. We have no chill here. It has left the building.
No.
My episode title is Napoleon is Proud.
Nice.
All right. Well, let's dive right into our thoughts for episode 3 of The Bear. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, this episode is just a good time. Honestly, I feel like every one of my what do you thinks for this show is going to be the same. Like this episode is so strategic in the way that it introduces you to like new aspects of these characters. So in our last episode, we had talked about Sydney and wanting to know more about who she is and why she ends up here. And that was like a burning question at the end of the previous episode. And then in this episode, we get to see more of that. We get to see Carmi put her in a really difficult situation and see how she handles that, how she responds to him. We learn more of her backstory, more of her character. So just the way that this show is able to tee up those questions and then knows the right time to answer them. You know, we don't get Sydney's full CV. We don't know all of her work history or everything she's gone through, but we know enough to kind of like satisfy us a little bit, but also keep us wanting more. And just, I love the way that this show is able to weave all of that character stuff in this episode that feels really action packed. And there's so much going on, but it's all character driven. And it's just great. We love being in the kitchen with these people. We love learning more about these people. And I feel like this episode really highlights that well and uses that aspect of like a hangout show really to its advantage to explore these characters and some of these other themes.
Yes, so true. This show is very strategic. I thought it was particularly interesting that one of the things that I was mentioning in the looking ahead section from our last episode is I just want to learn more about these side characters. And I appreciate that the show doesn't give us all of them at once. You know, like it really focuses on Sydney for the majority of this episode. And then we get to learn a lot more about Marcus and who he is and what his personality is like and some of the ways that his character operates in these different situations. I feel like we learned so much about him. And slowly, episode by episode, I imagine that it'll kind of center a different character. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But I thought that was smart. We didn't get to learn like a little bit about everyone all at once. No, we're actually getting to like sink our teeth into and really soak with one character. And then I would imagine the next one might be Tina's or Ibram's or whoever is next. So that was really smart and strategic. This episode, I think, also leans into a lot of the tenderness of the show a lot more than in previous episodes. So it's like deepening and evolving and growing in that way. There's kind of this quiet opening and ending that bookends this episode that I thought was particularly noteworthy. Like the episode starts and I'm like, wait, we're not in the kitchen? We are quiet. Okay, we're going to be quiet now. We're going to be quiet. And there's a really like emotional moment with Carmi that we start off the episode. And then I kind of felt relief when we got back to the kitchen. I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, thank gosh, we are back in the chaos. This is oddly comforting to be back in the kitchen. And the fact that the episode denies us of that from the beginning and kind of throws us into having to deal with difficult emotions together with Carmi, I thought was just such a smart choice. I loved that opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way that it helps you get into Carmi's headspace even more, because that's what he's feeling. You know, he doesn't want to be outside of the kitchen, and even though that he knows that things are not great in the kitchen, that is where he has thrived, and he's developed coping mechanisms so that he can excel there. So those moments when he's outside of it almost feels like a fish out of water. So what I loved about that opening, like I had a very different reaction than you did. I found it like so serene to be in that moment and just like, oh, it's
Mm.
quiet and it's calm and it's peaceful. And look at Carmi. He's taking steps forward and he's making healthy choices. And then all of a sudden we are slammed back into the bear and the beef. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh, I'm so stressed again. So I love the way that either reading, you're starting this episode with stress and chaos, and you're feeling all of the feels that these characters are. I just thought that that was so brilliant to just steep us into what Carmi is going through
Mm.
and learning more about how he's processing through these various environments that he finds himself in.
Yes, yes. And what's also interesting about that opening sequence is we go from this quiet opening shot of him watching the sunrise. We immediately cut to the kitchen, which we had different readings of. I was like, thank God we're back in the kitchen. I don't have to deal with difficult emotions. This is wonderful. It says more about me than it probably should. And then right after that, what I love is that the show then hard cut, like hard cut to empty cityscape shots, a series of them at nighttime with this like synth, like very like moody music, and we get to see Carmi like back in his apartment alone again. And it's like all those things that you thought you could run from and all of those hard emotions that you can run from while you're in the chaos of the kitchen, like they are still here for you when you get home at night. You know, like you still have to face all of those thoughts and feelings. And that like sandwiching I thought was really smart because we don't cut from that quiet opening to the kitchen and stay in the kitchen. No, we actually get back to that moment of quiet again and have to sit with Carmi again before we then arrive back to the kitchen again the following moment. So that whole sandwiching sequence I thought was so great.
And really, one of the things that I loved about when we see Carmi at his apartment is that on his bedside table there is a bunch of like antacids and stuff. You see like a whole bottle of Pepto-Bismol right there. And so even in these little details within the frame, you are able to get more into Carmi's state and understand just the immense pressure that he's under, that he's trying to cope with. And we might not know the extent of everything that he's facing, but we know that he feels as though it's like the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he has so much stress in his life. And that's even shown in just the set and the little details that they put in there.
Yes, yes, so true. And like this was a through line from the previous episode as well, but you see him constantly just like collapsing at home when he gets back, just absolute exhaustion. He's in front of the TV, you know, and his eyes are drooping. Like this is not like he's not thriving. This is not a healthy lifestyle. He has no bedtime routine, you know, with like 7 steps of brushing his teeth and then unwinding and reading 30. No, like this man is exhausted and he's like in pure survival mode.
Yeah. And sadly, probably the place that he feels the most at home is this incredibly toxic, chaotic workspace. And so even seeing him recognizing that there is a problem, this is not how this kitchen should be running. Okay, I am going to take the only method that I know how, the only kitchen example that I have seen, and I am going to impose it on this kitchen and expect good things to happen, you know, because he maybe doesn't know what else to try, because
Yeah.
he's only worked in kitchens that are run that one way. So it's it's this moment of like desperation, almost, of like, I need to make a change, I don't know what, so we're just going to do this. And we see the absolute mess that is created because of it.
Well, and you get the feeling, which the show kind of implies, which is that he's he's new, but he's not like, this is not his third day, right? Like he's been here for a bit, not a long time, but a bit, and he's tried other methods to try and help them develop better practices and cleaning behavior and all this kind of stuff. And he's kind of on his like last straw. This is his last desperate attempt to try something, and he's going all out, big, drastic changes, which is never the way to do things. Come on. This show, this episode specifically, is such a great one to watch like with your team at work. You know, it's like such a perfect example of uh workplace dynamics, both healthy examples and also some not so great decisions that are made. And I'm sure we'll get to some of those moments, especially a moment between Sydney and Carmi I thought was so illuminating. But in this part of the episode, I love that Sydney is the one who voices her skepticism of this being the right approach. And what she voices her opinions, and ultimately her higher up decides something different, and so she respects that. But I appreciate that she voices it. And in our last episode we talked about how Sydney's EQ and her ability to be aware of people dynamics and her emotional intelligence is very high. I feel like we see that so well. Her immediate gut reaction is, hey Carmi, like this is going to create a toxic hierarchical shit show. Are you aware? Like, we're going to do this? You want this? I'm waving my hands now. And he goes along and he continues with that path. But she does voice her concern, and she kind of saw it from the beginning.
Well, I also find it so interesting how Carmi decides to split the roles between them. You know, like he takes on the business stuff, which he honestly has like no business doing. And then he kind of like feeds her to the sharks almost, and is just like, you do the chef stuff and I'm not going to be a part of it. And I think that that's so interesting given what happens in the previous episode, where Sydney comes with this full business proposal of all the things that need to be done, how the business needs to change so that it can become profitable, like all of this. And then in the next episode, Carmi is like, no, I'm going to take the books, I'm going to take the business side. I just think that that's an interesting little character revealing moment, in addition to everything else that we learned about Carmi in this episode.
Yeah, arguably having to figure out how to like transform and evolve this team and deal with all those people dynamics is a far more challenging, like emotional task to do. Like the business side perhaps is a lot more around crunching the numbers, thinking about like the industry and your sourcing partners and stuff. It's less like right in front of you having to deal with people. And I feel like he's so emotionally exhausted that he's probably like, you go deal with that stuff, because that stuff's hard. And I also can't even deal with my own emotions, let alone other people's. So you're right. He really does feed her to the sharks. And I love that she calls him out on it at the end, in that scene, in the ending of this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting the way that this episode, I think in particular, handles Carmi. Because like we talked about, he starts out going to Al-Anon and dealing with his own emotions, and then he makes this decision unilaterally without really consulting Sydney and putting her in a very bad place. And so when that happens, I'm like, okay, Carmi, I'm upset with you. Like, how could you do this to Sydney, who is just the rock of this show? She is the best. Why are you alienating her and treating her like crap? That is not okay. So like, I'm mad at Carmi for a good chunk of this episode. And then by the end, there is the reveal that it's Mikey's birthday. And I thought that it was so brilliant for that to come at the end, because then that gives us a chance to like recontextualize everything that Carmi has done in this episode. obviously it doesn't excuse any of his crappy behavior, but it helps us understand why he was so chaotic, why he was so panicked, why he was so unwilling to listen to Sydney or anybody else, because he was so preoccupied in his own grief and loss that nothing else existed out of that. So I think even the pacing of that and the emotional journey that this episode takes us on with Carmi alone is pretty fantastic.
And it's neat that it's a structure that the show has employed, albeit in a much lower, like, emotional stakes way in the previous episode with the cigarettes. Like, it's a small little detail, but you're like, at the final couple of minutes of the episode, you find out, like, oh, actually, Carmi's the one that is, first of all, is the culprit behind the cigarettes being right next to the stove and not Richie, even though he just, like, cussed Richie out for it. And you get to, like, have that moment at the end of, like, it wasn't you, it was you all along, buddy. And this episode does something similar in that structure, but the stakes are much higher, obviously. And the way that builds, I think, is thrilling as a viewer, because then the next episode you're wondering, like, man, what are the details that, like, I only have part of the story, and I have to wait to get to the next part of the story that's going to potentially change the way that I read a situation. But it's part of the, like, excitement, I think, and the thrill of watching a show like this that is so smart in that way.
And then something else that I love that this episode does is that we see how Carmi's, I'm going to say, poor leadership style influences Sydney, and then she starts leading poorly as well. So like when she first gets this terrible, impossible assignment, she is still being herself, and she is trying to lead with obviously clarity, but also has that empathetic nature where she is in tune to other people and is responding from that. And then over the course of the episode, Carmi shuts her down, like, over and over and over again. And there's that one point when she's trying to, like, explain, trying to, like, voice it, and he's like, no, yes, chef, like, that is all that I need to hear. And so then she gives him a yes, chef. And then you see from that point that she starts to do that to everybody else in the kitchen. Obviously, she's frustrated. They're not listening to her. They're hazing her. All of that is a factor. But I thought it was so interesting that we see that Carmi's bad leadership then starts to influence Sydney, and she starts to lead in a similar way, even though she knows that that's not the way to lead. And then by the end, obviously, they're able to have that conversation, and she is able to come out of her shell again and start leading him and casting a vision for what their partnership could become. So it's this interesting journey that we go on with Sydney too, of her almost like trying on a different leadership style and then going, oh no, that's not who I am. And then she returns to who she actually is.
Yeah. And I love that we got to experience that with her by the time we get to that ending conversation scene, because we've lived through that with her, and for both Sydney and Carmi, there's this feeling and awareness that we have as the viewers of, like, they have endured this leadership style many a times in their past, and both of them have that, like, acknowledgement of, like, oh yeah, we trickled into that territory that we did not want to, and so let's course correct, let's reset, let's get back to what we are about, because we all of a sudden, like, drifted back towards this toxic way of leading, and since both of them have been on the receiving end, as they talk about in that conversation, I feel like you feel the emotional stakes of that a lot more in that ending sequence, and we got to see it throughout the course of the episode too. So, like, we as the viewers also are like, yeah, that wasn't great, let's do this differently, we're on board too, we want to do it differently with you.
Yeah, there's a better way. We don't have to employ toxic leadership styles and create toxic workplaces. Like, we can do better, guys.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that ending scene, because I think it is so good. It is so well constructed. Every detail about it I thought was so great. The pacing of the conversation was really good. One of the things that I really loved was, as shitty of a leader as Carmi is for a lot of this episode, the conversation that he has with Sydney is really opened up because he leans in, he creates space, he sits down to, like, sit with her, And he's the one that continues to press and ask her, like, hey, like, what's going on with you? Like, and it's after a moment of silence where she's clearly like not interested in having a conversation. And I appreciate that he just sits there to create space for her to like feel ready to share. And he's not pushy about it, but he does continue to engage and not just say, okay, well, I'm going back in now. Like, I got a bunch of things to do, and just disconnect. Like, no, he's leaning in gently and tenderly and creating space for her to open up and begin to share. And you see that at first she's a little bit hesitant, but as he continues to listen and hold space for her, she really continues to share even more. And so I love that the way that that scene is constructed isn't Sydney like blowing up and coming to him and just pouring out all of her emotions. No, because that's not how we sometimes operate as human beings. We sometimes need someone to hold space, to create safety for us to be able to like really let out how we're feeling. And he does do that for her. So he's a bad leader for most of his episode, but I thought at the end there that was such a great modeling of really human-centered leadership uh, principles around creating spaces and moments of safety.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that Sydney is shut down at first. And she is just like, "No, I'm not having this conversation with you." And you could tell that all of her walls up and they are not coming down right away. And it takes a while. Like it's a pretty hefty chunk of time that they're sitting out there, especially given the short runtime of this episode. Um, and I just appreciate how much time is spent for her to like slowly lower down her walls little by little. And then I love that by the end of the conversation, she is able to like cast that vision. Like she is able to see what this place could be and what their partnership could be, and she's able to like almost call him up to this like higher plane of vision than they currently are. You know, this restaurant doesn't have to be this way forever. We can do more, we can do better. And that's just such a valuable thing to have, and that's such an incredible skill that people have, to be able to see those things and then be able to help other people see that vision. So it's really cool to see Sydney go from like shut down because of how Carmi's treated her in the positions that she's been in, to then operating in her strengths and like using this superpower that she has to help almost lift him up as well.
It's so good. It's so good. And before she kind of looks ahead and casts this vision, she also gives him some good critical feedback in a very healthy,
Yeah.
calm, firm, but helpful and from a place of like, you did this and it was not cool and it made me feel this way. And I appreciate that she communicates with such clarity without her attacking him, without her going after his character. She's just saying, I you this is what your actions were and I did not like it and I would not want this again, you know? And then after that she's like, okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way and we're aware and we're clear, let's think about what we want to do next together. But she doesn't shy away from giving him some really critical feedback, and it was done in so with such like relational emotional intelligence. I mean, I'm just consistently impressed by this girl's EQ, and I would say that like out of all of the adults in the room, she's got such high EQ, probably highest of them all. And to give critical feedback well is very difficult. It's a skill, it's a muscle. You probably will mess up, and she's able to model that so well, which is again why I'm like, every team that we're at work should watch this, because it's a perfect example of how to give great feedback.
Well, and she's such a good contrast to how Carmi is used to communicating. You know, like if you look at how he and Richie communicate with each other, that is not constructive feedback. That is utter and complete chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really love that she is the adult in the room, let's
Right.
be honest.
Yes.
And is showing him what true leadership looks like and what good communication looks like, which is what he and Richie in particular are constantly struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
They do not communicate well with
No.
each other or with the others around them. So it's so it's such a stark contrast, which I think is really smart for this show to help differentiate these characters from one another even more. Like, we know that they're different people, obviously, but their personalities, their communication styles, their leadership styles, all of that is so varied, so different from one another. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what helps make this show and these dynamics with these characters so interesting, is that they are all so different.
Yes. Yeah, so true. And we get to see them all collide with each other in these really fascinating ways in these
Mm-hmm.
different
Yeah.
scenarios. Um, one little detail that I really loved in that feedback scene is the cinematography, like the way that it's shot and cut. And there's a moment where Sydney is talking, but the camera's on Carmi. And it's focused on Carmi for like quite a long time, for the like majority of the duration that Sydney's talking. And usually the camera is on the person that's talking, and then it'll cut to, the camera will shift to the shot of the other person talking in a conversation. But it was so important for the camera to be focused on Carmi for a long time, because he's nodding, he's looking down, he's listening, he's taking in what she's saying. And I thought it was such a great way to use the camera and who the camera's focused on to really communicate that idea of like, no, he's listening now, he's attentively engaged. And I thought that was so significant, because it's such an important part of like what they're talking about too, because she's literally saying like, you didn't listen to me earlier. And so for the camera to be communicating like, no, Carmi's listening now finally, and he's really taking it in, and he's so earnest in the way that he's just like really trying to understand. I thought that was some really great camera work and editing. So I thought it was great. Really, really good. I loved it.
And then that scene so brilliantly lends with Sydney making a joke
Yes.
at Carmi's expense.
Yes.
It's so good. Again, this show's ability to balance all of these different emotions all at once. So we just have this difficult yet hopeful character revealing conversation. It's so good. It's so heartwarming. We feel a little bit better after just a hellacious day in the kitchen. And then a joke.
Yes.
It was
So
great. It was perfectly timed. It was
Yep.
just humorous enough. Even their reactions to it, it was just enough humor to lighten it a little bit, but you're not going too happy, too silly. It was just spot on.
Right.
Tonally, it just made absolute sense.
So good. It's so good. And then she follows it up with like, come on, I had to have one, right? Like I deserved at least one.
Yeah.
So great. This is how to do it well, not the Marvel way where you've got like in the middle of the action sequences, we're fighting the final battle, like people are cracking jokes with each other. Like, no, this does not make sense. Totally does not work. Not a fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a masterclass on how to do emotion and action and character development and multiple like tones all in one. You know, not every show, not every movie can do that well, because it's a very difficult thing to get right. And yet the Bear is somehow landing all of these complexities in a very short amount of time too. So I think the writing of this show can't be praised enough. Like, it is absolutely exceptional.
Yes. So true. And I feel like a lot of shows that are able to do a lot of this so quickly and efficiently in such a short period of time, like, rely on really big, colorful characters, or like really specific types of scenarios, right? Like, you think about like so many of the shows that are like big comedic elements, or are really fun and dramatic and exciting and thrilling. Like, there's often these like larger than life characters in these very niche situations. And I love that like every character on the show feels so grounded. And I think it's a testament to the fact that the show really knows who these human beings are, that they don't need to rely on painting with big, colorful vibrant colors in order to create that sense of like distinction and differences between them. No, like these people are just interesting and exciting enough as fully grounded, fully realized human beings that feel really real to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they absolutely feel real. And I think what's also so fun is seeing parts of yourself in some of these characters.
Yeah.
Like there's certain times when like Carmi will do something and I'm like, "Oh, Carmi, that's really bad." And then I'm like, "Oh, wait, I can do that sometimes too. Oh no." And I think that's what helps make this so relatable is like
Mm-hmm.
we can see ourselves in some of the characters or we know people who are like that
Uh-huh.
character. It doesn't feel like a person on a screen, but it feels like an actual real life person.
Yep.
And even these situations feel
Yes.
normal, you know, like we all know what it's like to be thrust into a difficult situation at work and your boss isn't listening to you and the people that you're working with also aren't listening to you and you don't know what to do. Like
And you've just
that's
had
a
a
pretty common
day.
thing to
Yeah.
do.
And everything's going
Yeah.
wrong. Things are falling. Your
Yeah.
car got a flat. Like you're late. You spilled coffee
Yeah.
on yourself. Your computer's dying. It's just a day. Yes.
Yeah. We've all had those.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're going through it in the kitchen, even if we haven't worked in a kitchen, we're still like, "Oh yeah, I know what that's like."
Yep.
Oh, it's
Yep.
great.
It's so good. One of the devices that the show, this episode specifically, uses, which I thought was so smart and also made for such a fun moment, was when Sydney is assigning out the different roles to each of
Oh,
the characters. And I'm like, this is perfect because the way that each character will react is going to be so revealing, so telling of who they are as a person. So of course, Tina's like, no English, like just
yeah.
Ivra, I accept, and he has no idea what weird French name role that he's just received is, and Marcus just is excited to make a chocolate cake. Like it's so fitting for like who each of these characters are, and we learn so much about them from this tiny little moment of their reaction to like Sydney doling out their role name in French.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good and is so consistent with the character. And and then helps explain some of what we see in the rest of the episode. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
see Tina being very antagonistic towards Sydney, but that's all set up in a scene like that where
Yep.
she's like, I'm not feeling it. I got my apron, which is way better than y'all's dumb aprons. I don't want your stupid name. I'm gonna do things how it's always been done. And I'm gonna mess with you because that's what we do, you know. And then seeing the guys who are a little bit more like on board, they're like, yeah, sure, we'll do it, but they're just trying to have fun.
Yeah,
And
they're
it's the
exactly.
wrong time to have fun. So I love that all of these things are so interconnected and they make sense with the characters. All of these choices that are being made, they make sense. And the show isn't just doing things to be dramatic, but it all feels like something this character would do.
Yeah, yeah. There's no fat on this. Each
No,
episode on
none.
each episode's
Yeah.
narrative arc, there's no fat, no scene, no detail is wasted at all. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yep.
And I think that's also just something that this show does very well because episodes are short.
Mm-hmm.
They probably could have gotten a budget to make longer episodes,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not needed. And so I just that ability, that restraint that this show has to only show us what is the most important. And so there are some episodes in the first two seasons that are a little bit longer. And so in that longer episode, it needed to
Mm.
be that length
Yep.
because we trust these creators to know what to give us and what to cut out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I saw that there's some episodes that are only like 22 minutes too at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Yeah.
like, wow,
Oh,
okay.
yes.
And then the next one's like 45. And you're like, okay,
Yes.
got it. Makes sense.
Jen, I'm so excited for those episodes.
Ugh.
Yeah. Those are some of the ones that I'm very excited to review and talk about because I remember those just based on the timestamp. I know which episodes those are. I'm so excited. I'm ready.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
one is like the penultimate episode. I think the other one's the finale or something like that, where it's like They're back to back with each other. It's not like random.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you
Yes.
not just take, like 15 minutes from one and assign it to the other? Like, there's got to be a reason if they're back to back too. I'm doing the math in my head. You could have even like 30, 35-minute episodes for both of them. But no, we needed to do it this way.
Yep, they sure did. It pays off. You will see when we get there.
Wow. Amazing. Okay. Any other things we want to shout out in the episode before we give out some awards?
Can we just talk about Marcus really quick?
Yes.
Why
is he the best?
Is such a sweet.
Why is he an angel?
An angel who loves to bake.
It's just even better, Of course, he's the one who's like, I want to make a chocolate cake. Can I make a chocolate cake?
It's so good. Yes, Marcus, you can make all the chocolate cakes you want. Go ahead. I love, again, it's not overly done, but he is just this like sweet and steady guy. Yeah. And so the whole episode, he's just asking Sydney like, hey, can I help you with that? Hey, can I help you with that? And every time she's getting more and more frustrated. No, I don't need your help. And then when everything goes wrong, he is right there to help. And again, it's not this like overly done thing. It just feels so natural that this guy is going to come in and say, I'm going to help you, even though you were a jerk to me all day. And then he says, just keep going. Like, oh, Marcus, you are the sweetest human
being. So you know what you're doing to us. And it's working. And we are all of our heartstrings are getting tugged in the right direction. Oh, so good. So good. Well, what's great about that scene too is that he doesn't say a word. He just comes, helps her clean it up. He brings towels. Doesn't say anything. Like, he doesn't make her feel bad. Yeah. He doesn't even say like, oh my gosh, what happened? Just the silent, stable, but like clearly aware that she is also not wanting to talk. She's embarrassed, and he just is so quietly and gently and so tenderly just like encouraging her. But he also doesn't do it immediately too. Like, it's like after they've been wiping for a while and she's calmed down. Like, okay, talk about EQ. Maybe there's a close second here.
Hello.
Which might be Marcus.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. They can be numbers 1 and 2.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that the way that he handles that down to those little details too was so great.
Yeah. He's so good. I'm glad that we get to see those facets of him, and he's just a steady guy, and we all need those steady people in our lives.
Well, even the way that he reacts to getting his role assignment, he's just like, oh, this? Okay, cool. Like, with the style. Like, all right, let's go. Just happy to be here. Figuring out there's a new opportunity for him to make some new things in this new system, like just taking it by the horns and running with it. Ah, what a wonderful character.
Yeah.
Okay, my last little shout out is for a tiny little detail that I was like, that's genius. I hope that was intentionally designed. If not, that's a wonderful happy accident. So Carmi is telling them, before Sydney's giving out the roles, he's telling them and introducing, basically, we're going to implement this new system called the French Brigade, blah, blah, blah. And in the middle of him saying, I don't want to change your system, the video game guy in his little voice says, F you, in the background. And it's like, it brings to life what probably all of the other people in the room are thinking as they're receiving this news. And it's so perfectly timed. It's such a small little detail, but I hope that was intentionally designed because it is so great. It is chef's kiss.
Oh, that moment is so good. Yeah. I love those little details throughout this show. It's so smart.
Yep. All right, let's give out some awards. So the first one is Top Chef. Who is getting this award this week?
I would like to give this award to both Ibra and Marcus, because when Sydney is telling them about Carmi's terrible plan, and this is after Richie has come in and been like, nope, this is dumb, and then he like dips or whatever. Both Ibra and Marcus are like, okay, yeah, I'm on board. So I love that instead of going along with Richie, going along with Tina, who are very dominant
Yeah.
personalities. These two are like, no, okay, we'll do this. We'll do
Yeah.
these fancy French names. And I just thought that that was such a good moment and says so much about these two characters. So I would like to give them the Top Chef award.
That is so good. Yeah. And they kind of like, it's like lighthearted. They're like, wow, what are these fancy new names? I'll take one.
Yeah.
My choice for Top Chef goes to Marcus for his patience listening to Carmi's plums monologue. It was wonderful. Really good. He's going on and on about the 4 different ways. And Marcus just, yeah, okay, and tell me more. Yes. And how did you make that? It's great.
Yeah, that's some good active listening.
Yes, very good. Very good. We've all been in a conversation where like, oh, this person's very passionate about this thing that, wow, they're going. I've unleashed so much.
Yeah, that moment when you're like, oh no, I made a mistake.
Yeah, you're like, can I retract my question? I don't want to know
this
anymore.
was just supposed to be, this is supposed to be just quick. Like, I wanted like a 1-sentence response, and you've given me a monologue.
Yes, exactly. Well, it also is a wonderful little detail that we didn't mention about Marcus is that he prints out Carmi's dishes photos and hangs them up on his wall for inspo. Are you kidding me? This man is perfect.
And he can make you a mean chocolate cake, so that's pretty sweet.
Second category is Achievement in Chaos. Who's getting this award? For what moment?
I'm going to give this to Carmi for introducing this new terrible system and then running out of the shop almost immediately after. And I think that is very chaotic. So just shout out to Carmi.
I think he literally does run.
Yes, he does.
Out the back door.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it, Sydney. Bye.
Yeah, that is chaos right there.
That's great. I'm giving this award to Tina for stirring the pot.
Nice. Yep, that she does.
Of chaos. Yes, she is the leader, head chef of the chaos and the hazing process that ensues. Okay.
Yeah.
And next category is spiciest line. Who's getting this award for what line that they deliver?
I'm going to give this to Sydney when she says to Carmi early in the episode, I didn't say I wanted to run a Russian gymnastics program.
So good. Yes. Talk about speaking up and voicing your opinions. You know, at least you can make it fun and spicy while you're at it.
Yeah. Direct and spicy.
Yes.
Nailed it.
Perfect. I'm giving this award to both Carmi and Sydney for saying, fuck brunch. There's some bold claims. I'm sure the process of making lunch and making brunch and having to support both savory and sweet full main dishes is probably really annoying. But there's a lot of brunch lovers out there who feel very passionately about their brunching on the weekends. So, it's bold claims.
Yeah. Love it. I also love a good brunch because I don't like breakfast food in the morning, so I want to eat lunch at like 10:30. That's optimal for me, and brunch is that. So
amazing. Yep.
I am a brunch fan, but I am thankful that I've never had to cook a brunch. So
yes,
if I had, I would probably feel similarly to them.
Yep. They both were like, yeah. F that.
I love that like brunch is like the fate worse than death for them in the kitchen. Like, no, never brunch. Brunch is the worst. It's so funny.
Yeah. After a good, healthy disagreement, you need something to rally around, and you love a common enemy. An enemy.
Yeah.
So
brunch is that enemy.
Yeah.
It will unite chefs around the world.
Okay, looking ahead, what are you excited about?
Just more goodness, man. I want to see a more exceptional writing, great, efficient storytelling, more entertaining character moments. I'm ready. I am buckled in. I'm so excited.
Love it. Yes. So we do learn more about Sydney in this episode, but as we've mentioned in the past, the show's done a great job of leaving you wanting more. I feel like there's more to her. There's more to her backstory. Like we understand that she's here to like do something new, but like why did you come to begin with? You know, I feel like there's something in her backstory with her family and her this being her father's favorite that I feel like they're gonna do something there. They're probably gonna tug on her heartstrings. There's probably gonna be this moment where like her and Carmi can like help each other heal and grow, and by pouring into this like new endeavor to honor these people that they loved and the things that they loved. I don't know. There's something there that my curiosity is still there for learning more about Sydney's backstory. So I'm intrigued about that. I'm hoping that we continue this little trend that we're on of each episode really centering different characters. So there's at least 3 more characters that are left to learn more about. So I don't know, maybe they won't follow that structure anymore, but I'm intrigued to see more of these other characters and who they are. I feel like we got some really great glimpses of Tina and of Ibra and of Falk. And now we've got some with Marcus and Sydney as well, but I'm intrigued to learn more about the side characters. And I feel like there's still more to unpack with Richie. I just feel like there's so much more to learn about all of these humans. So, yeah, I'm excited to learn more. I think Carmi also has so much of a trajectory that he's on now, and he has begun his journey fully. So there's probably a lot more there. That's a lot. I feel like I've just listed every character on the show, so that's great.
Yeah.
And unhelpful.
It is great. No, but I think that demonstrates just how good this show is, that even some of these side characters, Ibra, Tina, Sweeps, Fack, like they're not main characters. They are minor characters in this huge ensemble cast. And yet we know enough about them to be interested in learning more. And I think that that's really impressive with a cast that's this big. Like there's a lot of characters that we meet and that we're having to juggle all these different personalities and stories and everything. And yet it gives us enough that we want to keep going. So I think that was actually a really good answer, because it shows just how effective this show is at creating that intrigue.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think one other like core overarching question related to all of them is that you definitely get the sense that they've all been here for a long time and that they've all been here together for a long time. So I'm just also intrigued, like what has kept all of them to stay? You know, like in these types of roles, it's often common to like jump to the next thing that gives you a higher pay, and you don't have that, like you're not like a lifer at some places, right? The way that you might be at, you know, some corporation that's got you like golden handcuffed with their 401k plan or whatever. Like they are so like rooted into this place and this family that they've created amongst themselves, that like I just want to know how that got to be. So yes, lots to be intrigued about. Every time the episode ends, I feel like it's such a tease. I'm like, oh, come on. I wanted more. But I did get so much already. So I am satisfied, but also I want more.
Which again, so impressive, because it makes you want to click that next episode button.
Yeah.
You are just satisfied enough that you're like, oh, this was a good episode. Like I am pleased with this. And yet I need more. I need to watch the next one. And it's so consistently good at doing that, which not every show is. So again, just shout out to the writing. Yes. Solid.
Very much so. It's hard to accomplish that, especially like to not create the desire for clicking next episode out of a lack of feeling satisfied in the one that you just watched. That's hard to do. Yeah. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of episode 3. You can find it available on Hulu. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continue our journey through The Bear Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review letting us know your thoughts about episode 3. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at tbnspod or email us at tbnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon to discuss episode 4. So we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again soon.